April is the month that decides how your garden looks for the rest of the year. Most people plant flowers that bloom once, fade out, and leave empty spaces behind. But the real strategy, the one experienced gardeners rely on, is planting perennials that spread, fill space, and keep your landscape alive season after season. These are not just plants that grow. They expand, multiply, and transform your garden into something that looks full, layered, and intentional without constant replanting. Today I'm showing you 10 fast-spreading perennials you should plant in April, ranked from reliable to completely unstoppable. And stick with me, because a few of these plants don't just grow. They take over in the best possible way. Number 1. Creeping Phlox. The ground cover that creates a waterfall of color. Creeping Phlox is one of those plants that completely changes how your garden looks. Not by growing taller, but by spreading wider and faster than almost anything else in its category. Most gardeners focus on vertical growth plants that rise up and create height. But what they often ignore is ground coverage, and that's exactly where Creeping Phlox dominates. This plant doesn't just sit in one place and bloom. It expands outward, forming a dense, low-growing carpet that covers bare soil, fills gaps between larger plants, and eliminates the empty patches that make a garden look unfinished. And once it starts spreading, it doesn't stop easily. Year after year, it grows wider, connecting different sections of your landscape into one continuous, flowing layer. When it blooms, the transformation is dramatic. You don't get scattered flowers. You get a full surface covered in color. It creates the effect of a living carpet, almost like someone poured color across your garden. This is why it's often described as a waterfall of blooms, especially when planted along slopes, edges, or raised beds. Another key advantage is how it suppresses weeds. Because it grows so densely, it blocks sunlight from reaching the soil, which naturally reduces weed growth. This means less maintenance over time. Instead of constantly clearing space, Creeping Phlox fills that space for you. It thrives in full sun and prefers well-drained soil, but once established, it becomes surprisingly resilient. It can handle dry conditions better than many flowering plants, which makes it ideal for areas where watering isn't always consistent. Compared to traditional flowers that bloom briefly and fade, Creeping Phlox builds structure. It's not just about seasonal color. It's about long-term coverage and consistency. This is the kind of plant that makes your garden look full, even when nothing else is blooming. And that's the real shift. It's not just a flower. It's a foundation layer that turns empty ground into a permanent, living design element. Number 2. Daylily. The unstoppable bloomer that thrives anywhere. Daylilies are one of those rare plants that completely remove uncertainty from gardening. Most flowers require the right soil, the right weather, and constant attention just to perform well. Daylilies ignore all of that. They grow in conditions where other plants struggle, and once they establish, they become almost impossible to fail with. That's why experienced gardeners rely on them, not for a single bloom, but for consistent, long-term performance. What makes daylilies especially powerful is how they bloom. Each individual flower lasts only a single day, but the plant produces so many buds that it creates a continuous cycle of blooming. One flower fades, another opens. This keeps going for weeks, sometimes months depending on the variety. The result is a plant that always looks active, always looks alive, and never feels like it has finished. But the real advantage is not just blooming, it's expansion. Daylilies grow in clumps, and those clumps increase in size every year. What starts as a small planting gradually becomes a large, dense section of your garden. Without replanting, without extra effort, the plant multiplies and fills space on its own. This is what turns a simple flower into a long-term landscaping tool. They are also incredibly adaptable. Daylilies tolerate poor soil, inconsistent watering, heat, and even partial neglect. This makes them ideal for areas where other plants fail: edges of gardens, roadside spaces, or spots with uneven soil quality. Instead of fighting conditions, daylilies work with them. Another key advantage is how easy they are to divide. As the clumps grow, you can separate them and replant them in new areas, effectively multiplying your plants without buying more. This turns one plant into many over time. Compared to high-maintenance perennials, daylilies offer reliability. They don't just bloom, they build your garden year after year. They reduce empty space, reduce effort, and increase visual impact without demanding attention. This is not just a flower. It's a system that grows stronger every season, making your landscape look fuller, more established, and more complete without constantly starting over. Number 3. Bee balm, the plant that brings hummingbirds to your yard. Bee balm is one of those plants that doesn't just grow in your garden. It changes the entire environment around it. Most plants exist quietly, adding color or texture, but bee balm brings movement, energy, and life. The moment it starts blooming, your garden stops feeling static and starts feeling alive. Hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies are drawn to it constantly, turning a simple planting into an active ecosystem. What makes bee balm especially powerful is its spreading nature. It grows through underground rhizomes, which means it doesn't stay contained in one small spot. Over time, it expands outward, forming larger and denser patches. This allows it to fill space naturally without requiring constant replanting. Instead of isolated plants, you get connected clusters that feel intentional and full. The blooms themselves are bold and unmistakable. With vibrant shades of red, pink, and purple, they stand out immediately, even from a distance. But unlike plants that bloom once and fade, bee balm produces a strong presence during its flowering period, making it one of the most visually impactful additions to a summer garden. Another important advantage is its aromatic foliage. When touched or brushed, the leaves release a distinct fragrance, adding another layer to the sensory experience. This makes the plant not just visual, but interactive. It engages more than just sight it. Engages smell and movement as well. Bee balm thrives in full sun to partial shade and prefers moist, well-drained soil. Once established, it becomes reliable and returns every year, expanding further each season. While it may need occasional thinning to control its spread, this is actually a benefit. It means the plant is doing exactly what you want, filling space. Compared to standard ornamental plants, bee balm offers something deeper. It creates activity, supports pollinators, and builds a dynamic garden environment. It doesn't just sit there, it participates in the space. And that's the real difference. Bee balm doesn't just make your garden look better. It makes it feel alive, active, and constantly evolving with every passing season. Number 4. Black-eyed Susan, the golden flower that blooms for months. Black-eyed Susan is one of the most dependable perennials you can plant if your goal is simple, consistent color without constant effort. While many flowers give you a short burst of blooms and then disappear, this plant does the opposite. It stretches its flowering period across months, creating a steady, reliable presence that keeps your garden looking active long after other plants have faded. What makes it stand out immediately is its bold visual contrast. The bright golden yellow petals surrounding a deep, dark center create a look that is both simple and striking. Even from a distance, these flowers catch attention, and when planted in groups, they form large patches of color that anchor your entire landscape visually. But the real power of Black-eyed Susan is not just how it looks, it's how long it performs. It begins blooming in early summer and continues well into fall, filling that gap where many gardens start to lose energy. Instead of having periods where your space feels empty, this plant keeps things alive and visually consistent. Another key advantage is how easily it spreads. It grows in clumps that expand over time and can also self-seed, meaning new plants begin appearing naturally without replanting. This creates a gradual expansion that fills empty areas without effort. What starts as a few plants can turn into a full section of your garden over time. It thrives in full sun and adapts well to different soil conditions, including poor or dry soil. This makes it one of the most low-maintenance options available. Once established, it requires very little attention while continuing to produce strong results. Compared to high-maintenance perennials, Black-eyed Susan offers consistency. It blooms longer, spreads naturally, and holds your garden together visually when other plants start to fade. And that's what makes it valuable. It's not just a flower, it's a stabilizer. A plant that keeps your garden looking complete, even when everything else begins to slow down. Number 5. Yarrow, the drop-proof plant that thrives in poor soil. Yarrow is the kind of plant that completely changes how you think about difficult growing conditions. Most gardeners see dry soil, heat, or poor ground and assume nothing valuable will grow there. Yarrow does the opposite. It thrives where other plants struggle, turning neglected or low-quality areas into productive, visually strong parts of your landscape. What makes Yarrow especially powerful is its resilience. It is built to survive harsh environments, including drought conditions and nutrient-poor soil. Instead of requiring constant watering and fertilizing, it performs best when left alone. This makes it one of the lowest maintenance perennials you can add to your garden, especially in areas where regular care is difficult. Its growth pattern is equally important. Yarrow spreads steadily through underground roots, forming dense clusters that expand each year. Over time, it fills space naturally, reducing empty patches and limiting weed growth. This creates a self-sustaining system where the plant does most of the work for you. Visually, Yarrow adds a different texture compared to typical flowering plants. Its flat-topped clusters of small flowers create a layered effect, adding depth and structure to your garden. These blooms come in shades of yellow, white, pink, and red, making it easy to blend with other plants or use as a contrasting element. Another advantage is its role in attracting beneficial insects. Yarrow draws in pollinators, which helps support the overall health of your garden ecosystem. It's not just filling space, it's improving the environment around it. Compared to high-maintenance plants that demand constant attention, Yarrow offers independence. It grows without needing perfect conditions, spreads without needing help, and continues producing without requiring effort. And that's what makes it valuable. Yarrow doesn't just survive tough conditions, it turns them into an advantage, helping you build a garden that works with nature instead of fighting against it. Number 6. Catmint, the deer-resistant bloomer that keeps coming back. Catmint is one of those plants that quietly solves multiple problems at once. While many perennials look good for a short period and then fade, catmint builds consistency into your garden. It blooms for long stretches, spreads naturally, and comes back stronger every year while requiring very little attention. This combination makes it one of the most dependable plants you can add to any landscape. What makes catmint especially valuable is its long blooming cycle. Instead of producing a single flush of flowers, it creates waves of soft purple blooms that last for weeks. And if you trim it back after the first bloom, it responds by producing even more flowers. This reblooming ability keeps your garden active and visually full for much longer than most plants. Another major advantage is its growth habit. Catmint forms wide-flowing mounds that gradually expand outward. It doesn't just grow, it softens the edges of your garden, filling spaces between harder structures like paths, stones, or borders. Over time, it creates a natural, relaxed look that feels more established and less forced. One of its most practical benefits is resistance. Deer and many pests tend to avoid catmint, which means it can grow undisturbed in areas where other plants might be damaged. This reliability makes it especially useful in locations where maintaining plants is a challenge. Catmint thrives in full sun and well-drained soil and handles dry conditions surprisingly well. Once established, it requires minimal watering and very little maintenance. It's the kind of plant that performs consistently without constant care. Compared to short-lived bloomers, catmint offers duration. Compared to delicate plants, it offers toughness. And compared to high-maintenance options, it offers simplicity. That's what makes it powerful. Catmint doesn't just add color, it adds stability. It keeps your garden looking full, soft, and alive without demanding your time, making it one of the most reliable perennials you can plant. Number 7. Hardy Geranium, the underrated spreader for tough spots. Hardy Geranium is one of the most underrated perennials you can plant, mainly because it doesn't demand attention, and ironically, that's exactly what makes it so powerful. While other plants compete for the spotlight with bold colors and dramatic blooms, Hardy Geranium quietly does the work most gardens actually need. It fills gaps, covers difficult areas, and creates a consistent layer of growth that holds everything together. What makes this plant especially valuable is its ability to thrive in challenging conditions. Shaded corners, uneven soil, awkward spaces where nothing seems to grow. This is where Hardy Geranium performs best. Instead of struggling, it adapts. It spreads outward, forming dense mats that cover ground efficiently and prevent weeds from taking over. Over time, it turns problem areas into productive parts of your landscape. Its growth habit is steady and reliable. Hardy Geranium doesn't spread aggressively in a chaotic way, but it expands consistently, building coverage year after year. This controlled spreading makes it ideal for creating a natural look without losing structure. It connects different areas of your garden, smoothing transitions between plants and reducing the appearance of empty space. The blooms are subtle but effective. Soft shades of pink, purple, and blue appear over an extended period, adding gentle color without overwhelming the rest of your garden. Meanwhile, the foliage remains dense and green, maintaining visual coverage even when the plant is not actively flowering. Another key advantage is its low maintenance requirement. Once established, hardy geranium requires minimal care. It tolerates a range of conditions and continues producing without constant attention, making it ideal for both beginners and experienced gardeners. Compared to high-maintenance plants, hardy geranium offers quiet reliability. It doesn't demand perfect conditions or constant work. It simply grows, spreads, and improves your garden over time. And that's the real value. It's not just a plant you notice. It's the plant that makes everything else around it look better, more complete, and more established. Number 8. Garden Phlox, the fragrant summer showstopper. Garden Phlox is the plant that adds presence to your garden. While many perennials stay low and blend into the background, this one rises above them literally. It introduces height, structure, and a bold visual layer that makes your landscape feel deeper, more dimensional, and more complete. If creeping phlox covers the ground, garden phlox builds upward and fills the airspace with color and fragrance. What makes garden phlox especially powerful is how it transforms a flat garden into a layered one. Its tall stems carry dense clusters of flowers that stand above surrounding plants, creating a focal point that draws attention immediately. This vertical growth breaks the monotony of low-growing plants and adds a sense of balance to your landscape design. The blooms themselves are rich and vibrant, appearing in shades of pink, purple, white, and red. But what truly sets garden phlox apart is its fragrance. Unlike many modern plants bred only for appearance, this one brings scent back into the garden. When planted in groups, it fills the air with a noticeable, pleasant aroma that adds another dimension to the experience. Another important advantage is how it expands over time. Garden phlox forms clumps that gradually increase in size, producing more stems and more blooms each season. This means your garden becomes fuller without needing to constantly add new plants. It thrives in full sun and benefits from good airflow, which helps maintain its health and strong flowering performance. With proper placement, it becomes a reliable, long-term feature. Compared to low-growing perennials, garden phlox adds structure and dominance. It doesn't just fill space, it defines it. And that's what makes it powerful. It's not just another flower. It's the plant that gives your garden height, presence, and that unmistakable finished look that makes everything feel intentional and complete. Number 9. Goldenrod, the misunderstood fall beauty that feeds pollinators. Goldenrod is one of the most misunderstood plants you can add to your garden, and that misunderstanding is exactly why it's so underrated. Many people assume it causes allergies or consider it a wild, uncontrolled plant. In reality, goldenrod is one of the most valuable late-season bloomers you can grow, especially if your goal is to keep your landscape alive and active well into fall. What makes goldenrod especially powerful is its timing. Most gardens begin to fade toward the end of summer. Colors disappear, blooms slow down, and the entire space starts to feel less vibrant. Goldenrod does the opposite. It begins to bloom just as everything else is declining, bringing bright golden yellow color back into your garden when it's needed the most. Its growth pattern is strong and efficient. Goldenrod spreads through underground rhizomes, forming large clusters over time. This allows it to fill space naturally, creating bold sections of color that don't require constant planting or maintenance. Once established, it becomes a reliable presence that returns every year, stronger than before. Another major advantage is its role in supporting pollinators. Late in the season, food sources for bees and other beneficial insects become limited. Goldenrod provides an essential source of nectar, helping sustain these populations when other plants are no longer blooming. This turns your garden into an active ecosystem, rather than just a visual display. Goldenrod thrives in full sun and adapts well to a variety of soil conditions, including poor or dry soil. It requires minimal care once established, making it ideal for low-maintenance gardening. Compared to early-season bloomers, goldenrod extends the life of your garden. It keeps color, movement, and activity going when everything else starts to fade, and that's what makes it powerful. It doesn't just add beauty. It fills the gap when your garden needs it most, making your landscape feel complete from spring all the way through fall. Number 10. Lamb's Ear, the soft, silvery plant that transforms borders. Lamb's ear is one of the most unique plants you can add to your garden, not because of its flowers, but because of its texture and color. While most plants rely on bright blooms to stand out, lamb's ear does something completely different. It uses its soft, silvery foliage to create contrast, and that contrast is what makes an entire landscape feel more refined and intentional. What makes lamb's ear especially powerful is how it spreads. It grows low to the ground, forming dense mats that gradually expand outward. This allows it to fill borders, pathways, and edges with a consistent layer of coverage. Over time, it replaces bare soil and turns unfinished edges into clean, structured sections of your garden. The texture is what truly sets it apart. The leaves are soft, almost velvety, which adds a tactile element that most plants don't provide. This makes it not just something you look at, but something you interact with. It changes the way your garden feels, not just how it looks. Its silvery gray color plays an important role as well. In a garden filled with greens and bright flowers, lamb's ear acts as a visual break. It tones things down, balances color intensity, and makes surrounding plants stand out more. This subtle contrast is what gives a landscape a more polished and layered appearance. Lamb's ear thrives in full sun and well-drained soil, and once established, it is highly drought-tolerant. It requires very little maintenance, making it ideal for low-effort gardening. It spreads steadily, but is easy to manage, allowing you to control its shape without difficulty. Compared to traditional foliage plants, lamb's ear adds something different. It doesn't compete with flowers, it enhances them, and that's the real value. It's not just a filler plant. It's a design element that ties everything together, making your garden feel softer, more balanced, and visually complete. If you plant these in April, you're not just planting flowers, you're building a system. These perennials don't just grow. They spread, multiply, and take over space in the best possible way. Instead of replanting every season, your garden starts working for you, becoming fuller and more established each year. That's the difference between a garden that looks temporary and one that feels complete. Drop a comment below and tell me which one you're planting first. And if you want more strategies to build a low-maintenance, high-impact landscape like this, make sure you subscribe, because this is just the beginning.